Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, we're now going to do a really interesting experiment, the first ever live recording of the hit podcast 2 Cups of Tea. I don't know if you've heard it. It's really great, and it's just so good. It's so good. People just telling amazing stories and hearing from people. So I'd like to thank Tom Price, who's here, who's going to help interview Janet Street Porter. Just to say, when I got married, my father said to me, "What can you possibly say about Janet that she hasn't already said about herself?" And when I was thinking about introducing Janet Street Porter, I thought, well, what on earth can you say about Janet Street Porter? Because she's so well known to us as a broadcaster and as a journalist. She's rushed here from Loose Women, which isn't that much fun rushing across town, so thank you for doing that. I think we all know her to be a very strong, powerful, opinionated and very funny person. She's a fantastic character, so we're really grateful to you for coming over and giving us your time. So over to you.
Thanks very much, thank you. That's nice, thank you. Well, hello and welcome. This is an unusual live edition of the 2 Cups of Tea podcast, coming to you from the British Library at the National Conference of the Campaign to End Loneliness. My name's Tom Price, and my job today, very simple one. We put the kettle on, we press the record button, and we get to listen to another compelling life story from an ever so slightly older legend. And as a podcast, ever so slightly. As a podcast, 2 Cups of Tea is all about subtly raising awareness of the loneliness that exists for a large number of older people today. In each episode, you'll hear the life story of a different, amazing member of the public. These definitely are not gloomy conversations about solitude. Instead, they are a celebration of incredible characters and the rich, full lives they've lived. Now, unlike Jonathan Ross or Graham Norton, normally on the podcast, you won't have heard of the guests. But today, on this special edition, you possibly will have. Oh, that was a good timing for the phone call there. So on the podcast today, we are really, really thrilled to welcome the wonderful Janet Street Porter, ladies and gentlemen. So, Janet, the format of 2 Cups of Tea has always been harking right back to my guests' very beginnings in life. Mm-hmm. So, where and when did life start for you, please?
My first memories as a child are being in a pushchair, being wheeled through Fulham, which was a very working class part of London back in those days. So that must have been, I was born at the end of 1946, so it'd be the end of the 1940s and early 50s. I was in this pushchair and my mother wheeled me to somewhere that had a kind of porthole, and I didn't know about television then, and I sat and looked at this thing for an hour, and washing went round. And it was the first laundrette in West London, or certainly within her walking distance with a pushchair. And I just watched the washing go round. I remember that really clearly. And the other pushchair memory is being pushed all the way from where we lived off past Green Lane to Fulham Palace Road to get something called a ration book or ration. I was tiny, but I remember that this book with the stamps in it was really important. And then, of course, I remember the dreariness of the 50s about being told to eat all your food, not waste every. I mean, now people whinge on about austerity. We had it big time, us poor baby boomers, because it's all your parents rammed down your throat was, how lucky you were to be alive, you got through the war, everything had to be recycled. We even got marmalade in huge tins because it was cheaper. I mean, how much marmalade can one family eat? But my mum and dad were big on saving money. And, we were working class family.
Has that stuck with you, the saving thing? Are you still quite frugal? Do you not like throwing things away? Do you still
I don't want to sound like Marie Antoinette, because obviously I earn quite a decent living now, but I am pretty frugal. Yeah. And my partner always says that I can make a loaf of bread last longer than anyone. I'll eat it even when it's rock hard.
What do you do with it when it's rock hard? Do you just toast it, or...?
Put it in the oven, put a bit of water on it, put it back in the oven.
There's a lot of twittering in the audience there. People go, well,
Yeah,
it's obvious
it's
we do it.
brilliant, aren't they?
There was a really interesting age divide there. Younger people in the audience going, yeah, what do you do with bread after...
You cut.
It's 3 days old, I have no idea.
You cut the mould off and you carry on.
Hang on one second.
I'm sorry, I'm so healthy. I just cut mould off food and eat it, yeah.
So you will eat live antibiotics off old breads? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem whatsoever. And I also live, I don't buy fast food, and I've never eaten anything like that brown drink with the Coca-Cola or whatever, if you're allowed to say that. I've never drunk that absolute cack. I've never eaten...
So you're not after an advertising
KFC.
deal today then? Okay.
No, I've never eaten any of that fast food.
No.
And I think that's because of the background I had when all our food was made from scratch, and that's what I do.
You still do that now, yeah?
Yeah, I take my lunch into the Loose Women Studios in a box, and I won't eat it in the room with the other people because I don't want to look at the crap they're eating. I feel completely superior about my diet.
I thought you were going to say, I feel completely superior about everything. That's
They say I'm like that anyway, but I couldn't comment.
Janet, tell us a bit about your mum and dad. You said working class background in Fulham. What did they do?
My father was an electrician, and my mother was a school dinner lady, which is a bit of a nightmare because it meant that I had to have school dinners in the school holidays along with the poor children because, you know, back in those days they served the school meals right through the year. And we lived in half a terraced house off Parsons Green Lane that had been given to my father by someone in his family. I didn't realise it, but my parents weren't married, and my parents didn't really get on, to be honest. They were the classic case. They'd met during the war, and my mother was married to someone else who would not divorce her. Anyway, my father came back from the war, and they moved in together. And then in 1948, I came along, and then 2 years later, my sister did. But by that time, it seems to me, looking back on it, that they weren't that well suited. My mother was Welsh. She was highly emotional. She was an intelligent woman. I think my father, I don't know, or I've never understood that much about my father. He was very ambitious. He went to night school and became an electrical engineer. And my mother decided to lie about her qualifications, which I kind of agree with, really.
Oh, yeah, always lie.
Well, she was too good to be either a dinner lady or she worked for a long time in a shop. And eventually she pretended she'd passed exams so she could get a job as a civil servant and work in the tax office as a clerical assistant.
So someone working in the tax office got the job because they lied?
Yeah, my mother did.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah, she just told a few fibs about what age she left school. She actually left at 14.
Wow, okay.
I think she said she passed her matriculation or whatever it was called in those days. Anyway, my first memories of childhood are that my mother missed Wales very, very much and got her sister down from Wales to live with us when my sister was born. And so they spoke Welsh all day long.
Did you speak Welsh as a kid?
No.
Oh.
The budgie spoke Welsh. So we had a budgerigar, and my dad, my sister and I spoke English. My mum and my auntie Vi spoke, and the budgie talked to each other in Welsh. So you might, that might be one of the reasons why I'm quite so peculiar. I mean, there's quite a lot about my childhood is pretty eccentric.
Yeah, that is fascinating. So did you have any other pets apart from the budgie, apart from the Welsh budgie?
I had a terrapin called Terry that I kept under an enamel bowl in the back garden in Fulham, but it disappeared. And I discovered years later that the people that lived on the back, their son, who has subsequently served several long jail sentences for violent crimes, I think he took Terry. I'm not going to say the son's name because I can't cope with him. He's quite a threatening character.
Yeah, but you get those cold case TV shows when they go back. You could do that with the terrapin. Get Trevor Reeve to help you. Go back and find out what happened to the terrapin.
I'll give you another example about how mad my childhood was. When I was about 8, I got amoebic dysentery, and so did my sister. Now, we never knew how we got it. But we were seriously ill, and the ambulance had to come to take us to isolation hospital, but my mother would not let that ambulance draw up in our street outside our house because she thought that the neighbours would think she was a bad mother. So the ambulance drew up in Harbledown Road, which was the next road over, and my sister and I were wrapped in blankets and passed over the garden wall.
That is astonishing.
So we disappeared from 18 Elmstone Road for 4 weeks. Nobody.
Oh my God.
We could have been buried in the back garden.
With the terrapin, probably.
Yeah.
That is astonishing, and that actually chimes with something with a generation now who maybe feel shame and embarrassed about being ill, about an ambulance pulling up outside that house. Do you think that's still the case?
Oh, I don't know, but my mother did that. She topped that occasion when I ran out in the road one day when we used to play in the street all the time. Obviously, there wasn't the traffic there is now, and a motorbike hit me under the chin, and my big T stuck in my bottom lip. And she wouldn't call the ambulance. She put a tea towel over my head and took me to hospital on the bus. And I mean, you know, isn't that a little bit odd?
Yeah, shame at illness.
Well, when I did a one-woman show a few years ago in Edinburgh, and I told some of these stories, some of the Welsh people in the audience said I was being unfair about how eccentric the Welsh were. It's like I was demonising an entire nation by saying my Welsh mother was mad. And a lot of people just couldn't believe them, but that's part of my story.
Were you well behaved as a kid?
No, I used to look at my parents and think they picked up the wrong baby. I thought they were stupid, they wore horrible clothes, but I think a lot of children do this. I used to look at them and I used to think, I'm sure my parents read The Guardian. It was my Mum and Dad used to read the Daily Mirror, and then on Sundays we had the Co-op newspaper. I was hoping that middle-class parents would come and collect me. They picked up the wrong baby, but it never happened. But honestly, by the age of 13, I was a fully formed snob. I was working in the library and after school,
You were like Lisa Simpson or Matilda, weren't you?
I was a self-improver,
Yeah.
really reading a lot.
What did your family make of your career?
Well, they were disgusted at first, because I studied architecture to start off with.
They can't have been disgusted with architecture.
No, well, they weren't. Originally, I went to Lady Margaret Grammar School, which was grammar school in those days in Fulham, and then there was talk, well, would I go to Oxford or Cambridge, because I was good at English, I was good at history, and I was good at art. But in the end, I had a boyfriend who'd been studying architecture, and I don't know, I got really intrigued, and I started taking loads of photographs and putting together kind of scrapbooks or whatever they'd call it now, mood books. And I applied to study architecture, and I had to sit an entrance exam. So it was very prestigious. I was the first person from my family to go to university, and the first person in my family to go on to further education, full stop. And then also, when I got to university, there were 5 girls to every 100 boys. So it was.
Which university did you go to?
I went to the Architectural Association in Bedford Square, just round the corner from here. So, you know, my connections to London are very, very strong because I grew up in West London, you know, inner London. I went to school in inner London. I went to university. And then after 2 years, I decided to take a year out because I wanted to go to America to go to Columbia University. So I took a year out, and I thought, while I'm waiting for grants, applying for grants and stuff, I did some writing. I sent off pieces to magazines and newspapers, and pretty quickly I got offered a job on a teenage magazine. And so I was like 20 or 21 years old, and I got this job on Petticoat magazine. It was a dream job. I had 2 or 3 pages a week. I could write whatever I liked about art, you know, design and interiors and so on. And then I was involved in the fashion. And then after about 9 months, the Daily Mail headhunted me and offered me a job.
And that was that. What year was that when that happened?
69.
Right.
So I was 21 or 22, and I had a job on the Daily Mail. So when people ask about my career, like, did you go through a load of training? No, I was very. I don't want to use the word lucky because I did work really, really hard, and in a way, I've been educating myself, going to I kept diaries of all the books, lists of all the books I read, all the movies I went to, the exhibitions I went to. I was just aiming to succeed.
And do you still feel that now?
Well, do I have the amount of input I had then? I do read. I read a lot of newspapers. I do get involved with the news a lot. I've edited a national newspaper. I've worked right across the media, so I've done radio, television, everything like that. I've even done a one-woman show in Edinburgh back in 2004. So I feel really comfortable in the world of the media.
Do you still feel hungry to do stuff?
I think as you get older, the challenge is to do stuff you haven't done before. And I'm not a very nostalgic person. I mean, I can tell those stories about my childhood, but it's like I'm talking about another person, to me, it's like a fairy story. It happened, but it happened back then. I don't connect it to how I am now. I mean, I think having parents that didn't get on very well made me more resilient, made me more self-contained. And I am a very calculating person, and I am not particularly, on some levels, a pleasant person, because to get on, you've got to be really tough.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, I've been watching that TV series Press, which Ben Chaplin playing the horrible editor, and I go, that's me. Because you don't become the boss by being Mrs. Nice.
Yeah, I love your pride at that as well. Yeah, it's the only way to do it.
Yeah, when I was a newspaper editor, I had the problem of morning conference where all these people troop in and come out with the most fucking lacklustre ideas you've ever heard of. So what I did was simply get rid of the chairs and get new, very uncomfortable chairs.
Oh my God.
Nobody could sit in a chair for longer than 10, 12 minutes at the most.
You're devious.
Yeah, well, I had to get them in and out. Otherwise, it would have taken all day.
So obviously we're here today to talk about loneliness. You've written about loneliness yourself. If it's not too personal a question, have you had periods of loneliness in your life?
Oh yeah, very much so, because I think people always talk about the fact I've been married 4 times, I've been in endless relationships, but you might look at that another way and say, well, perhaps you were in all these relationships because you couldn't bear to be by yourself, because there's two ways of looking at life. You have to learn to like being by yourself, but then you have to not let that run out of control. Like, quite a few of my friends are not living with anybody or not in relationships, and they really like their own company. And I always say, well, you have to be quite tactful about it. You have to say, you've got to be careful. You don't get too obsessed with how perfect everything is in your world, how you're controlling everything, you're in charge of it all. But isn't it a bit lonely at the end of the day? Mm-hmm. Don't you need that social interaction? And certainly, until I was 50, I never really lived by myself at all. So the idea of loneliness, ha ha ha, I don't think I was by myself.
Until you were 50, you didn't live by yourself?
No.
So
one man went out the door, another one was lying
It's because
down.
they didn't have... You know why that is? Because they didn't have comfy chairs. That's why they were coming in and out the whole time. But
Possibly so.
Tell me about that moment when you've hit 50 and you are by yourself. And I
think I finally married someone who was so appallingly wrong, and I inflicted him on all my friends, and I've airbrushed him out of my who's who entry.
I'm so going into your Wikipedia after this.
No, I don't think you'll find some of it's been manipulated, not just by me. The thing is that I got to 50, and suddenly it was a wake-up call that I was in a relationship with someone who was patently, it was a joke. And so after that, I finally woke up one day and I thought, I'm going to live by myself. It was absolutely fantastic. And then inevitably, I had a couple of relationships with guys that lasted about 5 years each. I'm quite a long-term person. The only reason I can say I've had 4 marriages and all these long-term relationships is because I'm now 71, nearly 72, and it's been kind of seamless. But then over the last 10 years, I would say, there have been times when I've thought, I've got to be careful that I'm not spending too much time by myself, and it kind of creeps up on you. And the other thing that people in my position forget is that you've got to interact with people who aren't in your world, and that's really, really important. And it's not just saying hello to someone on the bus. You've actually got to have more than more of a conversation.
So that's the thing, isn't it? What are the practical things we can do? What tricks?
It's very difficult for me to give advice, and I don't like giving advice because I always think, oh God, I grew up with all these women handing out advice, and I just railed against it. But from my own point of view, I think it's difficult because people come up and they recognise me. I'm very recognisable, and I've got to get past that, and I've got to just have a normal conversation with them. But I've found the more I talk to people, the more rewarding their stories are. And also as a writer, I'm very aware of the fact that I need material, I need input, and I'm not going to get it by being Miss Snoot on the underground looking the other way, am I? I've got to have to engage with people. And it can't only be people that are in my very, rarefied world.
So you force yourself out of your echo chamber, if you like, and get out there.
Yeah, you definitely have to do that. And also you have to engage with people who are not in your generation. Because I think there's several things about ageing that have always, that I've never felt comfortable with. That's when people say there was a better time in the past, and they think there was some rose-tinted part of their life going back a few decades when things were better. And I feel like saying, no, now's the best it's ever going to be. And if you get up every day and you say to yourself, now I sound like fucking Gwyneth Paltrow, but
trust me, if there's one
I'm
person
not
you
going
could
to
never
use
sound
the
like.
word mindfulness, but I do believe that you've got to get up in the morning and think, right, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
Let's give it a go. Let's not think last week was better or next week might be even better. Let's think today, let's go with what we've got. And you've got, my default position was always, I'm going to work, just as it used to be when I had to go to school. And I had to go a long way on the underground after my parents moved. I'd arrive at school and think, ugh. And I can just recall that feeling so strongly, where it'd be a grey day. You'd have Latin, followed by...
Geography.
Yeah, followed by human biology. And they put up that drawing of women's urinogenital system one more time. Anyway, now I wake up and I look out and I spend at least 2 minutes looking out the shutters of my house onto the square or looking at the garden, and I just think, that's great, right, I'm out of bed, I'm still breathing. And I stopped writing a shit list before I went to bed as well.
What's a shit list?
People that annoyed me during the day.
Brilliant.
I used to commit them to paper. At the top, can I just tell everyone in the room, when someone really upsets you, like today, if anyone's really hacked you off, write their names on a bit of paper and stab it like that. You wake up in the morning and you just think, what was that all about?
That's a great idea.
I've got past that now.
Oh, I'm going to start doing that. You've just handed that on.
No, but I'm being honest, I have had times when I've felt lonely, and then I've called friends, and sometimes, it's hard to see people, to get them to fit in with you and to see you on the day when you want to see them, because you're feeling lonely right now and you think, oh, they've got to see me, they've got to meet me face to face. That is one of the biggest problems that people face now, is that they communicate too much on social media, on the phone, on emails, and I just will not talk to people in chitty-chatting on the text. I hate. Do you know, I downgraded my iPhone to a horrible Nokia to stop me texting.
Has it worked?
Yeah, because it's so hard to text on the Nokia that it's cured me of it.
I found that really interesting and really resonant, because you've spent your life broadcasting in one form or another, and social media has turned us all into broadcasters. And what you're saying is loneliness will lie at the end of that often.
Yeah, what we think about the modern form of broadcasting, which is babbling twaddle on social media, is that you are babbling twaddle. You're not babbling anything that's necessarily got any merit. And real conversations have
pauses and moments of reflection, just like this one. You know, I don't know what you're going to ask me, and I might go around in circles and waffle a bit, but we'll get there in the end, and you're listening to me, and then I'm listening to you ask a question. So there's a kind of rhythm to it, a natural rhythm. And I find that texting and tweeting in particular is aggressive. And you see the people doing it, and you say, why are you doing it so quickly? What's it all about? What are those fingers doing all that for? It's very, very bizarre to me.
It's not conducive to human happiness. I honestly don't think it is at all.
Yeah, but I'm not, you know, so I know that a lot of older people really like Skyping is great and that kind of thing for staying in touch. And if I want to talk to my friends in Australia, I'll Skype them. Often I leave the picture off because I look like shit at the time of day we are. My auntie used to Skype my relatives in Canada, and then she'd ring me up and tell me they've got new kitchen cabinets or something, because me walking around the house holding the computer.
But that is a connection then, isn't it, when you're doing that?
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah, of course it is, of course it is. Listen, final question, Janet Street Porter. You have led an extraordinary life. I know you don't want to answer this question, because I've already asked you outside, and you said you don't want to answer it, but I'm still going to ask you. What lessons have you learned? What would you tell the 20-year-old Janet Street Porter if you could sit her down with a cup of tea and talk to her now? What would you say?
What I'd say is go outside your front door and think that today I've got to talk to at least 3 people I don't know, and keep doing that. Because I made someone laugh the other day. I said I've had to relearn having a conversation with people I don't know. My friend said, have you lost your marbles? I said, honestly, I'd realised that in a week I hadn't talked to anyone I didn't know already. So I have a challenge with Uber drivers. Can I get them to talk to me before I've gone a mile? So I want to know where they went, where they went. Most of them have been to university. I want to know what they're studying, what their job aspirations.
I've just got this image of you getting an Uber sitting in the front.
I always sit in the front.
Do you?
I always sit in the front.
Yeah.
In all things like that. That's why I don't like black cabs anymore. I want to sit in the front and I want to talk.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to talk, well, tough, because I'm going to talk to you.
Listen, Janet Street Porter, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
Very much.